She adjusted the Hamilton watch, ignoring the smirks of young lieutenants calling it a thrift shop special. Nobody in the briefing room paid attention to the quiet woman in the back row. Just another civilian contractor. Forgettable. Until General Hargrove walked in. Mid-sentence, his eyes locked on her wrist. The room fell silent as color drained from his face. He approached slowly, whispering a code name that hadn't been spoken in decades. Nightshade, the woman who'd been declared KIA in 1986, met his gaze steadily. The most decorated covert operative of the Cold War had returned because someone was using her playbook. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoyed this story and want more like it, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support means everything. The fluorescent lights of Fort Bragg's briefing room buzzed overhead as Lorimer Reed slipped quietly into the back row. At 62, she was deliberately forgettable. Gray hair pulled into a practical bun, sensible clothes that blended rather than stood out. While young lieutenants and captains filled the rows ahead with nervous energy and bravado, Lorimer carefully adjusted the Hamilton watch on her wrist, her weathered fingers working the aged mechanism with practiced precision. The room smelled of coffee and ambition, a scent Lorimer had known across 4 decades of service, most of it in shadows so deep even the Pentagon denied their existence. She took her seat, unnoticed, exactly as she preferred. In her world, being remembered was usually fatal. A cluster of young officers nearby noticed the movement of her adjusting the watch. "Nice antique," Lieutenant Devers smirked, nodding toward her wrist. "Salvation Army Special?" "My grandmother has one just like it," Captain Merrick added with a dismissive chuckle. "Probably worth more as scrap metal." Lorimer merely offered a thin smile, saying nothing. Her eyes, however, never stopped moving, cataloging exits, assessing personnel, tracking the senior officers as they filed in. These subtle movements betrayed a vigilance the others missed entirely, old habits from a life spent looking over one shoulder. At the front of the room, Colonel Blackwood began the briefing with grim news. American operatives had gone missing in Eastern Europe. Satellite imagery filled the screen, showing a remote facility nestled in mountains that straddled the old Soviet borders. "This group is using tactics we haven't seen in decades," Blackwood explained, advancing through intelligence photos. "Specific counter-surveillance methods that should no longer be effective." Lorimer's hand paused over her watch. A barely perceptible tension crossed her face, visible only to someone who knew what to look for. The watch beneath her fingertips felt suddenly heavier, its ticking louder in her ears. "Somehow, they're accessing classified American intelligence from the Cold War era," Captain Thackeray added, "methods that should be obsolete." Colonel Blackwood nodded. "We're dealing with ghosts from Operation Starfall, a program that officially never existed." In the back row, Lorimer's eyes narrowed slightly at the name, a name she hadn't heard spoken aloud in 36 years, a name that belonged to another life, when she answered to a different designation. The young officers leaned forward in their seats, intrigued by the mention of classified Cold War operations. They were born after the wall fell, Lorimer realized. To them, the Soviet Union was a chapter in history books, not the omnipresent threat that had defined her entire adult life. "These terrorists have somehow acquired knowledge of our oldest dead drops, our emergency extraction protocols," Blackwood continued. 3 intelligence officers disappeared last month, 2 more last week. The briefing continued, with questions flying about how outdated Soviet techniques could possibly compromise modern intelligence methods. The officers debated theories, leaked files, compromised agents, digital archives hacked. Lorimer listened without comment, her face a neutral mask that concealed the cold calculations happening behind it. She knew exactly how those operatives had been taken. She knew because she had designed the protocol herself, back when the world was divided by an iron curtain and nuclear annihilation seemed always just minutes away. The door at the rear of the room opened. Conversation instantly died as General Elias Hargrove entered. Tall, silver-haired, with the commanding presence earned through 40 years of military service, he carried himself with the weight of authority. The room snapped to attention. "As you were," he said, striding to the front. "This situation requires immediate action. The operatives we've lost, we're investigating." Mid-sentence, his gaze drifted to the back row and landed on Lorimer, more specifically, on the watch adorning her wrist. The words died in his throat. Lorimer met his eyes steadily, seeing the shock of recognition spread across his face. She had known this moment would come eventually, had spent 30 years preparing for it. Still, the weight of memory pressed down on her chest, making it difficult to breathe. The room grew uncomfortable as the silence stretched, color drained from the general's face. "Sir," Colonel Blackwood prompted, "everything all right?" Hargrove ignored him. With deliberate steps, he moved through the rows of seats, his eyes never leaving the Hamilton watch. When he reached Lorimer, he stood rigidly before her. That watch, his voice dropped to a whisper, was only issued to 6 operatives. Helsinki. Tuhatish deksen sata aka deksan kumentaku uasi. The room remained confused, but the senior officers sensed something significant was happening. Lorimer met Hargrove's eyes with a steady gaze. The decades fell away. They were no longer an aging general and a forgotten operative. They were young again, standing in a snow-covered forest outside Minsk, planning an extraction that would later go catastrophically wrong. Nightshade? Hargrove whispered a code name that hadn't been spoken in decades. For the first time, Lorimer's calm facade cracked, revealing a flash of something dangerous beneath. The name unlocked a flood of memories. Gunfire in darkened alleys, whispered passwords, the metallic taste of fear, the crushing weight of command decisions that sent good people to their deaths. "Hello, General," Lorimer said quietly. "It's been a long time." Hargrove looked as though he'd seen a ghost. "You were reported killed in action, Berlin. That was the plan," she responded, her voice now carrying an authority that wasn't there before. The other officers in the room watched the exchange with growing confusion. The civilian woman they had been dismissing minutes ago now commanded the undivided attention of a 4-star general. Something in her posture had changed, her voice had hardened, and suddenly she seemed to fill more space in the room than her physical form should allow. The general turned to the stunned room. "Clear the room. Classified briefing." The junior officers exchanged glances but quickly filed out, casting curious looks back at Lorimer as they departed. When the last had gone, leaving only the senior staff, Hargrove did something that shocked everyone present. He stood at perfect attention and delivered a formal salute to the civilian woman. Major Reed was the most decorated field operative in a program that doesn't exist in any official record, Hargrove explained to the bewildered officers. She ran the Starfall network behind the Iron Curtain for 7 years. 36 successful extractions, 12 compromised Soviet operations. The intelligence she gathered likely prevented World War III. As he spoke, Lorimer rose slowly, her unassuming demeanor falling away like a shed skin. Her posture shifted, shoulders straightening, chin lifting, revealing the soldier beneath the disguise. The transformation was so complete that the remaining officers found themselves unconsciously standing straighter in her presence. "The people targeting our agents now," she said, her voice now clipped and authoritative. "They're using my playbook because they were my team, the ones I couldn't extract before my cover was blown." "Major Reed was reported killed during the fall of the Berlin Wall," Hargrove continued. "Her body was never recovered." "For good reason," Lorimer replied. "I wasn't there." She turned to face the intelligence maps on the wall. "I was in a KGB facility in Kyrgyzstan, trying to extract the last 2 members of my team. The operation went sideways." Colonel Blackwood frowned. "If you'll forgive me, ma'am, why are we only hearing about this now? If you survived—" "Because I was burned," Lorimer cut him off. "Every identity, every safe house, every contact I had built over 7 years was compromised. The agency made a strategic decision. Officially, I died in Berlin. Unofficially, I was given a new identity and quietly retired." "Until now," Hargrove added. Lorimer nodded. "Until now?" The briefing room transformed into a war room, maps and files spread across tables as Lorimer detailed operations from decades ago that connected to current threats. Captain Thackeray watched in awe as she dissected intelligence with surgical precision, connecting dots that none of them had seen. The Hamilton watches were more than identification, she explained, removing her own and placing it on the table. The mechanisms contained microfilm with emergency extraction routes and contact protocols. If someone has recovered one and decrypted it, They'd have the blueprint to our entire Cold War intelligence network, Hargrove finished. Most of those protocols should be obsolete, Colonel Blackwood objected. Most, but not all, Lorimer replied. Some of our deepest assets were so sensitive that their information never made it into digital systems. The transition from Cold War intelligence to modern methods wasn't perfect. There are gaps, vulnerabilities. She turned the watch over, revealing a scratched surface that had once been polished steel. 6 operatives wore these watches. 3 died during extraction operations. 2 were captured. And the last... Archer, Hargrove said quietly. Lorimer nodded. My second in command, Alexander Volkov, codename Archer, Russian defector, turned by me in '84. Best field operative I ever worked with, captured during the same operation where I was presumed dead. You think he's behind these abductions? Thackeray asked. I know he is, Lorimer replied. The pattern is unmistakable. It's our old extraction protocol, reversed. Instead of getting people out, he's using it to lure them in. But why now? Blackwood pressed. After all these years? Lorimer met Hargrove's eyes. Because something's changed. Someone's activated a sleeper protocol we built as an insurance policy. A last resort if any of us were captured and turned. How can you be sure? Thackeray asked, still struggling to reconcile the unremarkable woman who'd entered the briefing room, with the legend now commanding it. Lorimer reached into her pocket and removed a small device that looked like a USB drive. This was in my hotel room last night. Russian FSB technology, latest generation. I found it because I was looking for it. She handed it to a tech specialist, who confirmed with widening eyes that it was cutting-edge surveillance equipment. Some things change, Lorimer said quietly. The people who remember me, they don't. What do you need? Hargrove asked without hesitation. A team, small, elite. This isn't about firepower. It's about knowing the playbook better than they do. I need access to the original Starfall files, whatever still exists. And I need to move fast. If Archer has the watches, he has everything, Hargrove finished. Consider it done. As the room erupted into activity, Lorimer returned the Hamilton watch to her wrist, feeling its familiar weight. For 30 years she had kept it close, not as a memento, but as a reminder of unfinished business. The young lieutenants had mocked it as worthless. They couldn't have known its true value, or the blood that had been spilled to protect its secrets. Somewhere in Eastern Europe, another Hamilton watch ticked in rhythm with hers, and its owner was waiting for her. The muted light of a tactical operations center washed over maps and photographs spread across steel tables. Lorimer stood in the center of it all, a fixed point, while military personnel orbited around her. In the 8 hours since her identity had been revealed, the mission had gained momentum with frightening speed. These are all the known locations with Starfall connections, she explained, her finger tracing a path across Eastern Europe. Most are long abandoned, but 3 have shown recent activity according to satellite imagery. Captain Thackeray studied the pattern with newfound respect. Less than 12 hours ago, he had dismissed this woman as irrelevant. Now, he found himself hanging on her every word. The old protocols relied on a series of markers, Lorimer continued. Signal locations that indicated which safe house was active. If Archer is using the original playbook, he would have reactivated these. General Hargrove entered, carrying a sealed folder with top-secret markings. The secretary has granted full authorization. Operation designation, Timepiece. Lorimer raised an eyebrow. Subtle. It seemed appropriate, Hargrove replied with the ghost of a smile. Your team is assembled. As if on cue, 5 individuals entered the room, 3 men and 2 women, all wearing the subdued insignia of Special Operations Forces. Major Reed, meet your extraction team, Hargrove said formally. Specialists in asset recovery, all with experience in the region. Lorimer assessed them with a practiced eye. Young, but not too young. Experienced enough to follow orders, not so experienced they would be rigid in their thinking. Captain Elliot Nash, Hargrove indicated a tall man with watchful eyes. Tactical lead. Major, Nash acknowledged with a nod. Lieutenant Zara Cole, Hargrove continued, gesturing to a woman with close-cropped dark hair. Communications specialist. Lieutenant Ren Matsuda, intelligence. Sergeant First Class Dominic Reeves, medic. and Sergeant Petra Novak, linguist. Lorimer took in each face, memorizing the details. How much have they been told? Only what they need to know, Hargrove replied. That we're extracting captured agents from a hostile force using Cold War methodologies. Lorimer turned to face the team. What you're about to hear is classified beyond your current clearance levels. General Hargrove has received special dispensation from the Secretary of Defense. If anyone wishes to withdraw, now is the time. No one moved. Very well, she said. The man we're pursuing was once one of ours. Alexander Volkov, codename Archer, Russian defector, recruited by me in 1984, presumed captured or killed in 1989. He was my second in command in a deep cover operation called Starfall. She placed a photograph on the table, a younger version of herself, standing beside a tall man with intelligent eyes and a watchful expression. Archer was the best field operative I ever worked with. Fearless, brilliant, adaptable. We ran extraction operations for defectors and compromised agents across the Eastern Bloc, until Berlin, 1989. Lorimer's voice remained steady, but those watching closely could see the tension in her shoulders. The mission went wrong. Our safe house was compromised. 3 of our team were killed covering our escape. Archer and I were separated. I made it to the extraction point. He didn't. Intelligence later indicated he'd been captured by a KGB Special Operations Unit. He was presumed dead. But he wasn't, Captain Nash said quietly. No, Lorimer confirmed. It appears he was turned, possibly through chemical means, possibly through psychological conditioning. The Soviets had advanced programs, and now he's hunting our people, Lieutenant Cole concluded. Using methods he and I developed together, Lorimer added. Methods only 6 people in the world knew about. 3 died during operations, 2 were captured. And you're the 6th, Sergeant Novak said. Lorimer nodded. Archer is using a reversed version of our extraction protocol to identify and capture modern intelligence assets. He knows where our people will go when they're in trouble because he helped design those protocols. Why now? Nash asked. After all these years? Lorimer glanced at Hargrove. The Cold War never really ended for some players. It just went underground. With recent geopolitical tensions, old networks are being reactivated. There's something else, Hargrove added. 3 weeks ago, a secure vault in a decommissioned military installation was breached. Among the items taken was a prototype communications device developed under Starfall. The Ikharov transmitter, Lorimer said quietly. What is that? Lieutenant Matsuda asked. A quantum entanglement communication prototype, Hargrove answered. Developed by Soviet scientists who defected in '86. Theoretical then, but ahead of its time. If someone has completed the research, they would have unbreakable, instantaneous communication across any distance, Lorimer finished. Completely secure, impossible to intercept. The team absorbed this information in silence. You said Archer was Russian originally, Nash noted. If he was turned back, he could be working for the new regime, or any number of private interests. That's what we need to find out, Lorimer confirmed. But first, we need to stop him from capturing more of our people. She returned to the map, indicating a point in the mountains of former Yugoslavia. This location matches the pattern from satellite surveillance, a former Soviet listening post, abandoned after the collapse. Recent thermal imaging shows it's active again. Our insertion point is here, she continued, marking a location 20 kilometers away. We move in quiet, establish surveillance, and confirm Archer's presence before attempting contact. Contact? Lieutenant Cole questioned. With respect, Major, shouldn't we be planning an extraction of our captured agents? Lorimer looked at the young officer. Archer isn't just holding our people. He's sending a message, to me. How can you be sure? Nash asked. In answer, Lorimer pulled out her phone and showed them a photograph. It displayed a wall with 6 Hamilton watches mounted in a row. 3 had their faces shattered. 2 were intact, but had red marks painted across them. The 6th mount was empty. This was sent to a dead drop email account I've maintained for 30 years, an account only Archer knew about. The broken watches represent the 3 team members who died, Hargrove explained. The marked ones represent the 2 who were captured, and the empty mount is meant for mine, Lorimer finished. It's an invitation. Or a trap, Nash pointed out. Almost certainly both, Lorimer agreed, which is why we need to be smarter than he expects. She looked around the table at each team member. Archer knows me. He knows how I think, how I operate. What he doesn't know is all of you. 4 hours later, a C-17 transport aircraft carried them eastward through darkening skies. The team checked equipment in practice silence while Lorimer sat apart, reviewing files from a weathered leather case Hargrove had provided. Those were supposed to have been destroyed, the general said, taking the seat beside her. I'm glad they weren't, Lorimer replied. There might be something here that helps us understand what happened to Archer after capture. Do you really think he can be recovered? Hargrove asked quietly. After all this time? Lorimer looked up from a file containing psychiatric evaluations from 1985. I don't know, but he deserves the chance. Even after what he's done? We don't know what was done to him, she countered. Soviet reconditioning methods were advanced. Chemical, psychological, neurological approaches we still don't fully understand. Hargrove studied her face. There's more to this, isn't there? Something personal. For a moment, the professional mask slipped, and Hargrove caught a glimpse of profound regret in Lorimer's eyes. I promised I would come back for him, she said simply. In our last communication, when we were separated in Berlin, I told him to hold position, that I would come back with extraction. That order put him in the position to be captured. You followed protocol, Hargrove reminded her. Protocol would have had me abort the mission entirely when our cover was blown, Lorimer replied. I made a different call. I tried to save everyone. Instead, I may have condemned him to something worse than death. She closed the file. I've had 30 years to think about the decisions I made that day, to wonder what I could have done differently. And now I have a chance to finish what I started, she said, her voice hardening with resolve. One way or another. Across the cabin, Captain Nash observed the exchange. Though he couldn't hear the words, the intensity of the conversation was clear. When Lorimer returned to reviewing her files, he approached Hargrove as the general moved to the front of the aircraft. Sir, permission to speak freely? Granted, Captain. How much do we really know about Major Reed's current allegiances? Nash asked quietly. 30 years is a long time to be off the grid. You're questioning her loyalty? Hargrove's tone cooled. I'm questioning the wisdom of placing complete operational control in the hands of someone who has a personal connection to the target, Nash clarified, especially when that target has already compromised multiple agents. Hargrove considered this. Your concern is noted, Captain, and not unwarranted, but I've known Lorimer Reed for 40 years. If there's anyone I would trust with my life, it's her. With respect, sir, it's not your life at stake. It's my team's. Which is precisely why she's in command, Hargrove replied, because she will do whatever it takes to protect her people. She always has. The aircraft began its descent toward a military airfield in Croatia. As the team prepared for landing, Lorimer approached Nash. Your concerns are valid, Captain, she said without preamble. Nash stiffened. You heard? I read lips, she replied matter-of-factly, a useful skill in my former line of work. And you're right to question my objectivity. I would do the same in your position. She held his gaze. I want to be absolutely clear. If Archer cannot be recovered, if he presents a threat to this team or to ongoing operations, I will neutralize that threat personally. Is that understood? Nash studied her face, looking for any sign of hesitation or doubt. He found none. Yes, ma'am, he said finally. Understood. Dawn crept over the mountain ridge as the team established their observation post. The abandoned Soviet listening station stood a kilometer away, its dilapidated concrete facade belying the activity within. Through high-powered optics, Lorimer could see guards patrolling the perimeter, two-man teams moving with military precision. Definitely not local militia, Nash observed. Those are professional operators. Lorimer adjusted her binoculars, focusing on the rooftop where a satellite dish had been recently installed. Communication array is modern. Thermal imaging suggests at least 15 bodies inside. Any sign of our missing agents? Lieutenant Matsuda asked, reviewing drone footage on a tablet. Nothing conclusive, Lorimer replied. But there's a subterranean level. Older Soviet facilities like this one typically had containment areas below ground. Sergeant Novak approached with a communications intercept. We've picked up encrypted transmissions, Russian military protocol, but with anomalies. Anomalies? Lorimer questioned. They're using outdated verification sequences within modern encryption. It's like they've deliberately inserted vintage elements into contemporary systems. Lorimer's expression hardened. He's baiting us, making sure we know exactly who's running this operation. The question is why, Nash said. If Archer knows you're alive and involved in this mission, why telegraph his position? Because this isn't about evading capture, Lorimer replied. It's about closing the circle, finishing what started in Berlin 36 years ago. Lieutenant Cole joined them, carrying a tactical radio. General Hargrove is on secure channel, ma'am. Lorimer took the handset. Reed here. We've identified 2 of the operatives at the facility, Hargrove's voice crackled. Former Spetsnaz, now working private contract, known associates of Viktor Ranskahov. The arms dealer? Nash questioned. Among other things, Hargrove confirmed. Ranskahov has been building a private intelligence network for years. Ex-KGB, former intelligence officers from a half-dozen dissolved Soviet states. He's positioning himself as a power broker in the New World Order. Lorimer processed this, so Archer might not be working for a state actor. It's possible, Hargrove agreed, but Ranskahov has known ties to the current Russian regime. This could be a cutout operation with official deniability. What about the Ikharov device? If they've completed the prototype, it would be worth billions on the black market, Hargrove said. Secure communications is the holy grail for criminal organizations, terrorist networks, and rogue states. Lorimer watched the facility through her binoculars. We need to move soon, before they relocate. Agreed. Satellite shows increased activity. They may be preparing to transport the captured agents. What's your plan? Lorimer outlined her strategy, with Nash adding tactical considerations. When they finished, Hargrove was silent for a moment. It's high risk, he said finally. High reward, Lorimer countered. This may be our only chance to recover both our people and the Ikharov device. Approved, Hargrove said. But Lorimer, remember your primary objective. Extraction of captured personnel, she confirmed, though they both knew what he was really saying. Don't let personal history cloud your judgment. As night fell, the team moved into position. Sergeants Reeves and Novak established a technical observation post with communications intercept capabilities, while Nash, Matsuda, and Cole accompanied Lorimer on the infiltration team. Approach from the north face, Lorimer instructed. There's a maintenance entry point that won't appear on modern schematics. Starfall protocol included obsolete access routes deliberately excluded from updated facility plans. Nash gave her a sidelong look. You're certain this entry hasn't been compromised? Nothing's certain, Lorimer replied. But Archer is expecting me to come through the front door. That's where he'll have his surprises waiting. They moved through the darkness with practiced silence, navigating the rugged terrain until they reached the northern face of the facility. As promised, a narrow utility shaft was concealed behind overgrown vegetation. This was how we extracted a physicist in '87, Lorimer explained, removing a panel to reveal an access tunnel. The Soviets never discovered the breach. Or so we thought, Nash added quietly. Lorimer acknowledged the point with a nod. Proceed with extreme caution. If Archer is using my playbook, we should expect countermeasures. They entered the narrow tunnel one by one, moving through decades-old infrastructure that smelled of rust and stagnant water. After 20 meters, they reached a junction with maintenance access to the facility's lower level. Life signs ahead, Matsuda whispered, checking a thermal scanner. 2 signatures stationary. Lorimer signaled for them to hold position while she moved forward to assess. The tunnel opened into a utility room that appeared unused for decades. Through a small window in the door, she could see 2 guards stationed in the hallway outside. She returned to the team. 2 sentries armed, blocking access to the main corridor. They are positioned to watch the primary entrance to this section, not the maintenance room itself. We need to neutralize them without alerting the rest of the facility, Nash said. Lorimer nodded. I'll handle it. Before Nash could object, she had moved toward the door, her body language transforming as she went. Her posture curved slightly. Her movements became less precise, more uncertain. By the time she pushed open the door, she appeared to be a confused, possibly intoxicated civilian. The guards spun toward her, weapons raised. "Who are you?" one demanded in Russian. "How did you get in here?" Lorimer responded in slurred Russian, gesturing vaguely behind her, appearing harmless and disoriented. As the guards approached to detain her, she suddenly straightened. 2 swift, precise movements later, both men were unconscious on the floor. Nash and the others moved in quickly to secure the guards. "Impressive," he acknowledged. "Old tricks still work," Lorimer replied, retrieving a security keycard from one of the unconscious men. "Let's move. We have minutes at most before they miss their check-in." They proceeded down the corridor, following Lorimer's knowledge of the facility's layout. At each junction, she made decisions with unwavering certainty, navigating the labyrinthine structure as if she had been there yesterday rather than decades ago. "How are you so sure about the layout?" Cole asked quietly as they descended a stairwell. "I memorized the schematics of every Soviet facility in the operational zone," Lorimer explained. "Standard Starfall protocol. Some things you don't forget." They reached a lower level that had been modernized with contemporary security systems. Matsuda made quick work of the electronic lock, and they entered a section that had clearly been recently renovated. "This is new," Lorimer observed, studying the reinforced doors along the corridor. "Detention cells." Nash checked the thermal scanner. 3 heat signatures in the second room on the left, stationary, consistent with restrained subjects. "Are missing agents?" Cole suggested. "Let's find out," Lorimer said, moving toward the indicated door. With Matsuda's expertise, they bypassed the electronic lock and entered what appeared to be a medical observation room. 3 individuals were secured to hospital beds, connected to monitoring equipment. Lorimer recognized them immediately from the mission briefings, the missing intelligence officers. "They're alive," Nash confirmed, checking vitals, "but heavily sedated." "Can they be moved?" Lorimer asked. Cole examined the medical equipment. "They're being kept under with a controlled infusion. If we disconnect them properly, they should begin to regain consciousness within 30 minutes. "Do it," Lorimer ordered. "Nash, stay with them. Matsuda, Cole, with me. We need to locate the Akarov device and any intelligence materials." "What about Archer?" Nash asked. Lorimer checked her watch, the Hamilton that had started all this. "He'll find me." As Nash began working to safely disconnect the captured agents, Lorimer led the others deeper into the facility. The renovations became more extensive as they proceeded, eventually opening into what appeared to be a research laboratory. "The Akarov project," Lorimer said, recognizing specialized equipment that matched descriptions from the original Soviet research. Matsuda moved to a workstation and began accessing the computer system. "They've made significant advances. According to these files, they've achieved stable quantum entanglement." "Can you copy the data?" Lorimer asked. "Already on it," Matsuda confirmed, inserting a specialized drive. "But there's something else here. Personnel files, operational histories. They're building profiles on former Soviet-era intelligence assets across Europe and North America." "A hunting list," Lorimer realized. "They're systematically targeting anyone who might have knowledge of the original research." "Which explains why they took our people," Cole added. "They were investigating the vault breach." As Matsuda worked to extract the data, a soft voice spoke from the doorway behind them. "You're earlier than I expected, Nightshade. Always the overachiever." Lorimer turned slowly. Standing in the entrance was a tall man with silver-streaked dark hair and penetrating eyes that held both intelligence and something harder to define. Despite the decades that had passed, she recognized him immediately. "Archer," she said softly. Alexander Volkov studied her with clinical detachment. "You look well for a ghost. I mourned you, you know. Until I learned the truth." "What truth is that?" Lorimer asked, signaling subtly for Matsuda and Cole to continue their work. "That you abandoned us," Archer replied, "left us to rot in KGB custody while you returned to your comfortable American life." "That's not what happened," Lorimer said evenly. "I spent 15 years trying to find you. By the time I located the facility where they were holding you, you had already been released. Or so I thought." Archer gave a cold smile. "Released is not the word I would use. Repurposed, perhaps." He stepped into the room, and Lorimer noted that he walked with a slight limp, an old injury probably from his captivity. Despite this, he moved with the same fluid grace she remembered, the mark of a lifetime spent in operational fieldwork. The Hamilton watch was a nice touch, Lorimer acknowledged. You knew it would bring me out of retirement. I counted on it, Archer confirmed. This was always going to end with the two of us face to face, the last surviving members of Starfall. It doesn't have to end at all, Lorimer countered. Whatever they did to you, whatever they made you believe, we can undo it. Come back with us, Archer. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Doubt, perhaps, or a ghost of his former self. You still think like an operative, he said finally. Always looking for the extraction, the clean ending. But some things can't be undone, Nightshade. Some loyalties once broken can't be repaired. I never broke faith with you, Lorimer insisted. I never stopped looking. Yet, here we are, Archer replied, on opposite sides of the same war. Just like Berlin. He reached slowly into his jacket, and Cole tensed, her hand moving toward her sidearm. But what Archer withdrew wasn't a weapon. It was a Hamilton watch, identical to Lorimer's, though more worn, its face scratched from years of harsher treatment. They let me keep it, he said, studying the timepiece. Their behaviorists thought it would reinforce the conditioning if I retained a physical connection to my former life, a reminder of what had been taken from me. And did it? Lorimer asked quietly. Archer met her eyes. It reminded me of something else. That time reveals all truths, eventually. The phrase sent a jolt through Lorimer. It was part of their private code, a verification phrase they had established for emergencies. Before she could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Your extraction team at the north entrance has been compromised, Archer said calmly. In approximately 3 minutes, this room will be swarming with Ranskahov's security forces. Come with us, Lorimer urged. Whatever game you're playing, it's not too late to change sides. Archer considered her for a long moment. Then, with deliberate movements, he crossed to a secured cabinet and unlocked it using a code only he knew. From inside, he withdrew a device about the size of a hardback book. Sleek, modern housing around technology that had been theoretical when they first learned of it decades ago. The Ikarov transmitter, he said, holding it out to her. Completed, functional, and worth more than either of our lives. Lorimer took it carefully. Why? Because some loyalties run deeper than nations, he replied. And because you were right, all those years ago. This technology is too dangerous in the wrong hands. The alarms grew more insistent. From the corridor came the sound of approaching footsteps. There's an emergency exit through the eastern maintenance tunnel, Archer said rapidly. The access code is the date we extracted the physicist from Minsk. You're not coming, Lorimer realized. I can't, Archer replied simply. What they did to me, it's not reversible, but I can give you time. He moved toward the door, drawing a sidearm. Get your people out. Complete the mission. Archer, Lorimer began. Alexander, he corrected her, using his real name for the first time in decades. Just this once, let me be Alexander again. Their eyes met in perfect understanding. Then he was gone, moving into the corridor to confront the approaching security team. We need to move, Matsuda urged, the data extraction complete. As they retreated toward the emergency exit Archer had indicated, the sounds of gunfire erupted behind them. Lorimer clutched the Ikarov device, her face set in grim determination. Some debts could never be repaid. Some missions never truly ended. But as they raced toward extraction, the weight of the Hamilton watch on her wrist felt somehow lighter. In the end, Archer had made his choice. He had chosen the mission over himself, just as he had been trained to do, just as she had done so many times before. It was the code they had lived by, the oath that had bound them across decades and continents. And in his final act, he had kept faith with that oath.